Hello there, kids. Today we are going to talk about 12-hour and 24-hour clock. Okay, so basically we're talking about time. So things that you should be familiar first, of course, is to know how to read time. And of course, I'm quite sure that pretty much you already know how to read time. So things that you should be familiar with is with AM and PM, when to use them and when not to use them. Okay, so basically, ang AM ginagamit from 12 midnight to 12 noon, no? So technically, once it reaches 12 midnight, it's already considered as AM, correct? From 12 midnight to 11:59 in the morning. Okay? So, this is when you basically use AM. And for PM, once it reaches 12 noon, until 11:59 at night. Okay. So, these are the basic two things that you need to be familiar with muna, yung AM and PM. Because this is very useful for the 12-hour system. And in relation to that, knowing the basics of AM and PM will help you go through with 24-hour system as well. Okay, so always know that for the 12-hour system, no, this is the only time that we make use of AM and PM. While for the 24-hour time naman, we don't. There is no AM, PM here. There's none. Okay? Because what in a 24-hour system kasi, this is actually also called as the military time. What do you mean by military time? So mga soldiers natin, mga under the military, mga Air Force and such, the Navy, they make use of the military time, which means instead of saying in the usual 8 a.m., in military time they will say this as 800 hours. Okay, H stands for hours. Okay? So, ganyan yung oras sa kanila. So, if it's 10 a.m., this is the time na they will say 1000 hours. Okay, they don't read it as 1000, but instead 10 by the hundreds. So that's how they say the time, 1000 hours. Okay, so which means if it's 11 a.m., they will say it as 1100 hours. Okay, so if you notice, no, since I'm using the AM parts here, you can notice that our base value are still there. 800, 800. 1000, 1000. 1100, 1100. So, we can now say that when the time in a 12-hour system is under AM, there is not much of a difference when it in terms of the 24-hour system. Okay? So ibig sabihin basta AM ha, again, if it's under AM, there is not much of a difference. So if it's 1:30 AM in the 24-hour clock, it's 01:30 hours. If it's 3:20 a.m., it's 03:20 hours. So halos the same lang, 'di ba? 6:40 a.m. That's 06:40 hours. So if you notice again, as long as it's a.m., there is not much of a difference in terms of our numbers. Okay. Now, the only time that these times are different once it reaches p.m., which means when the time goes over 12. Okay. Pag sa 12, parehas pa. The moment that you're going to reach 12, technically noon, it's still 1200 hours. The only difference it makes now once it becomes 1 p.m. Okay? Kasi nga, we are now making use of the 24-hour clock. In other words, hindi siya babalik sa 1, but will be continued as the next number from 12, which is 1300 hours. Okay? Technically here, all you need to do is just to know the equivalent. Which means 2 p.m. is equivalent to 1400 hours. And so on na yan. 3 p.m. is 1500 hours. If 4 p.m., it becomes 1600 hours. Okay. Now you might tell me, Teacher Mark, do we really need to memorize this? No. There is actually a technique that you need to know here. Because the difference between the PM part of the 12-hour system compared to the 24-hour time is that basically we just add 12 to it. Okay, once PM na siya. This rule only implies for the PM part. To the 24-hour system or the 24-hour clock is we basically just add 12 hours. Okay, baka tatanungin nyo, Teacher Mark, it doesn't make sense. Okay, tingnan nyo. Since this is PM, you take 1 plus 12 is equivalent to 13. Take 2, since this is PM again, plus 12 is equivalent to 14. PM again. Again, this only works for 1 o'clock and onwards ha. May sa PM na to, excluded ang 12. 12 will remain as 12. Okay? Going back. Since PM na naman to, 3 PM, take 3 plus 12 will give you 15. Take 4 plus 12 will give you 16. So in other words, if there is a 9 PM time, sa military time yan is, since PM nga, take 9 plus 12 will give you 2100 hours. Which means kung 10 o'clock in the evening, PM, so the same, take 10 plus 12 will give you 2200 hours. Okay? And if, of course, if 11 PM, most likely, you already know, plus 12 lang kayo, will now give us 2300 hours. And pinaka last time natin under the military time na ganito yung format is until 11:59 PM. So this will basically give us 11:59 hours. Y. Okay, sorry. Not 20. I lost track there. Sorry. That's 2,359 hours. Okay? So, yan ang pinaka-last natin na value. Kasi the moment this will reach its next hour, which is 12 midnight, or technically AM, no? Basically, AM. This is equivalent to 0, 100 hours. Okay? Yan lang yung difference nila. So that's the basic of learning about the 12-hour and the 24-hour system. Pag 12-hour to, again, if it's 12-hour conversion to 24-hour system, we basically just add 12. But if it's 24-hour system to 12-hour system, it's basically just minus 12. Okay? So, kunwari kanina, we added. So, this is an example of 12-hour to 24-hour. Okay? And the 24-hour only changes once it is already in PM. Yan lang yung kwan ko sa inyo, yung clue ko sa inyo. Okay? Because if you're going to give the time such as 8:25 a.m. in 12 hours time to a 24-hour time, this will still be the same. I already mentioned that earlier. Diba? Mention ko na yan. No difference pag AM. Okay, like what I've said earlier, nagpa-plus 12 lang tayo the moment it reaches 1 PM. Okay? Dito naman, magma-minus 12 tayo. Of course, pag 1 kwan lang din. For example, let's say we have a time of 1700 hours. How do we change it to, this is 24 hours How do we change it to 12-hour system? So, ang gagawin nyo lang, take the base and subtract 12. And if you're going to subtract 12 from it, you will now be left with 5. So, meaning it's 5 p.m. Okay? So, ganun lang. You might ask me, Teacher Mark, how do we know if it's AM or PM? Obviously, paglalagpas nga itong value na to, if it goes over 12, the conversion of it is always in PM. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung mga 1,300 hours, 1,400 hours, all the way to 2,300 hours, they will all end up with a PM. Okay? Kasi kung ang oras dito, let me just add the H. Kasi, if this is equivalent nga, for example, 0,600 hours, since wala siyang ibang value dito, this is equivalent to 6 AM. Okay? Basta the same lang to. It doesn't go over. Na mag-start nga ang PM once it becomes over the clock, the usual clock that we have, which is only until 12. Okay? Once it goes over that, magiging PM na siya. Okay? Ganun lang po kadali ang 24-hour system to 12-hour system and vice versa. Okay? 12 hours to 24 and 24 to 12 hours.